My name is Brian Krieger, and I'm founder and president of Katallasso, Inc., the parent organization to Katallasso Family Health Center. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about where did Katallasso come from, why, and what were some of the details of the logistics of putting this place together. So it all started probably 5-6 years ago when I started to evaluate my life a little bit closer and started to think about what do I want to do with the next 20 years of my life, or whatever the time frame is, but what's my next long-term commitment going to be? So I went to my pastor and I talked to him a little bit about this, and he said, you need to find out what God has uniquely prepared you for, using your experiences, using your upbringing, using your personality, and all these different traits. So he gave me a book, and it was called Game Plan by Bob Buford. And it really helped me to focus my life a little bit, or not just a little bit, but a lot. And in reading that book, I found out what I'm uniquely prepared to do has to do with the urban environment, especially with children. I started to pull myself off boards and different things that weren't associated with, inner city type issues. So after I determined what I was uniquely prepared to do for Christ here on earth, I started reading other books and doing different things and just really focusing on books. And I would watch videos on YouTube that were really focused on what does God want us to do here on earth while we're here. And I really got into it, and I really got passionate about it, and I could just feel God working through me in this. Because I'll tell you right now, I read more books that year than I read in the prior 10 years, because I just had this thirst and a hunger for what does God want from me. Well, about that time, our pastor at our particular church preached a message on sharing the love of Christ without reciprocation, without expecting anything in return. So I really got touched by that. I really felt strongly that God was trying to tell me something. And I'm frankly a doer. And I thought, what am I going to do with that? It has impacted me to this level. What am I going to do with that? I decided what I was going to do was pick a neighborhood in York City. And I didn't know which one, but I wanted to kind of think about what was the worst neighborhood at the time in York City. And I don't have a whole lot of fear of going into those kind of areas. And I was going to work to develop relationships with people. One of the books that I had read was When Helping Hurts, and by Fickert and Corbett. One of the things highlighted in that book is about how sometimes groups will go into cities or wherever, to another country, wherever, and not develop solid long-term relationships with people. But they'll come do their thing and leave. Well, I wasn't going to do that. So I chose a neighborhood that I thought was one of the worst ones in York City. And to me, at the time, it was South Queen Street. Some of you will know that neighborhood because there's a Hess gas station there. And frankly, at the time, there was a lot going on, a lot of shootings, a lot of drug dealing and that kind of thing. So I thought, how can I develop relationships with these people? Using some of the principles that I was learning. I was going to be consistent. I was going to go there every week at the same time. So they learned to rely on the fact that I was coming back. And all this has in it the idea that you want to share a genuine love of Christ with them. And you can only do that through repeated times at the same time, in most occasions, and develop that relationship. So I was going to go at the same time. You know what I wasn't going to do? I wasn't going to even tell them I was a Christian. I wasn't going to tell them what church I go to, because sometimes that creates a barrier, because people are used to that. People showing them love, but kind of with that ulterior motive. Those were my two main things, and develop relationship with people. So I had to come up with, how am I going to develop relationships with these people? And when I say these people, I only mean the people in that neighborhood, not a particular people group or anything like that. It's just the people that happen to live in the neighborhood. Everybody needs to be touched by the love of Christ and the hope that it brings. So I was going to work on it in this neighborhood. So I had to develop that. How was I going to approach people? How was I going to engage them? So I did something that's going to sound a little funny, but I went out to Toys R Us and I bought this really nice little red wagon, okay? So for 2.5 years, I walked that neighborhood, same time every week for a couple hours, and I gave out peanut butter and jellies and juice boxes. That's how I engaged people. It was mainly for the kids, but some adults would come along and talk to me, you know, about different things. And the first couple of weeks, you can imagine, they were very skeptical. They're asking me questions like, why are you doing this? What church are you with? And they're trying to figure out what the ulterior motives were. In fact, I could just tell they were waiting for me to pull my church bus up, load them up and take them out to my rural church. Or they were waiting for me to hand out my flyers for the Vacation Bible School that I was going to be holding. These are the kind of things that people do, that church groups do from a rural setting, and it's all good stuff, so don't dare get me wrong. But I was trying to break down barriers here, and I was going to try and break the mold. So I wouldn't tell them. I wouldn't answer their questions for the most part, but you know what? After the first couple times, their skepticism started to wean. It started to go away. It's little by little. We started to get to know each other's names. I knew their names. Some people would just call me the peanut butter and jelly guy. Some people knew my name, Brian. But I started to know who has diabetes, because the jelly would affect them. Good day, bad day. What kids had peanut allergies because they couldn't eat their Uncrustable, their peanut butter and jelly. So I would bring them other treats. So they started to realize that I was remembering these different little facts about them. So that relationship just started to grow, and it was awesome. Now, during this same time, our pastor preached on church unity. And I really thought about that one. That was the second conviction that made me start to think, what can I do about this? I started to think about that. So I started meeting with different pastors throughout York and York County, and wanted to see if they had kind of a Big C church attitude. Because the Big C church attitude says, we are all one church of Jesus Christ. And yeah, sure, we might disagree on a couple of things here and there, but those core beliefs, those core tenets of Christianity we believe in, and we should be coming together. And that's one thing that I recognized was churches don't do a great job working together. So I started to pull together this pool of pastors that seemed like they understood that. They weren't just focused on, you know, their church, their budget, filling their pews, their programs, but they recognized that we are all one Big C church. Well, I got up to about 8 or 9 pastors. And keep in mind, this is all going on while I'm handing out peanut butter and jellies on Queen Street. And I started to realize, you know what? We can have meetings. We can come together and pray, which is very important. Don't get me wrong. But we can just have these meetings. But really, are we impacting the society in which we live? Not really. So I started to think, we need to do something. There has to be some kind of activity. I was going to a small group Bible study with a group of people, maybe 8 or 10 folks. And during this whole time, I'm seeing all this cool stuff happen. I'm starting to see puzzle pieces in my life that I didn't think really had any significance. But, you know, even different things with relationships that I knew 20 years ago that all of a sudden were coming back, that had something to do with the urban environment or just the things that I was getting involved in. It was amazing. So I was sharing over weeks and weeks and weeks with this small group Bible study the different things that were happening. Cool things, I mean, things that were just really impacting me. And eventually I came in and I said, you know, but we have to do something. I'm meeting with all these people, but we got to do something. And one of the people there was Dwayne Furman, who's a physician's assistant. And he looked at me and he said, Brian, did you ever think about doing a clinic? And again, I'm still doing my peanut butter and jellies and all that, but I am really starting to look at what need could we fulfill. And I looked at Dwayne and I said, no, why would I think about a clinic? And he started to relay to me that when he was in school near Philadelphia, they used to go into the urban environment and work in this clinic. But I'm still thinking, at that time, I think I was a manager at Giant for about 16, 17 years. And I'm thinking, my expertise is nothing, and it contains nothing in the medical field. But I said, you know what, Dwayne, I'm going to check it out. And I'm going to see, is that truly a need? And if that turns out to be the need, that's the need we're going to fulfill. I don't know how God's going to do it through me, but I serve a big God. I left there and I came home and I'm talking to my wife and she says, but Brian, there are already two big organizations that are taking care of the poorer folks, the most vulnerable amongst us, that don't have health insurance. And I said, you know what, but I'm going to check it out. So I started making calls, and this is when it got really exciting. I used to just think of networking as a kind of a businessman, nose in the air kind of thing. And then I started to realize, and I never even liked to talk about networking because it just was, I don't know, I just had a negative thought when I thought about people that network. So I started to realize I had built over those 16 years or 17 years, whatever it was, with Giant and all my community involvement and missions trips and all those kind of things, church involvement, I had created quite a network. And I didn't realize it, but I already knew a lot of people that were community leaders in the healthcare field. So I started calling them up. I knew the medical director for the York City Bureau of Health. We were on a board together. I knew the medical director for Wellspan's Community Health Center. We were on a board together also. I started calling just all these doctors and people that know about community health, and every single one to the person said there is a big need for that here in York City and really in York County. So I was very encouraged by that, and I just kept meeting with people, and about 2.5 years, as I said before, into giving out the peanut butter and jellies, I had to stop it because frankly this all started coming together. People became very encouraging. People started to come together to put the center together, and it just was really, it was just really cool. I mean, it was amazing to watch what God was doing. And not only that, but to see, and I'm going to mention this again, all of the plans that were laid out before it even came to my mind, before Dwayne mentioned that to me. By the way, Dwayne became the co-founder of Katallasso Family Health Center and is our current medical director. During this period of getting to know people, making friends and all that, it just became a little too much, and I could feel the Holy Spirit just tugging at me a little bit because I was still working full-time at Giant, and I was still doing all this other ministry type work, and I really had to even focus it just a little bit more. So I talked to my wife, we took a leap of faith, and we did a couple of things. Number one, I went part-time in my full-time career and just worked 3 days a week. Big leap of faith. Another thing that we did was we moved here into the city because really, did I have a whole lot of credibility? Not really. I never worked in the medical field. Sure, I've led a lot of different things, but nothing like this. So, and we wanted to be closer to the people. So we moved right here downtown. We only live 5 blocks from the health center where it currently sits on Belvedere Avenue. So it was these leaps of faith that just took our faith to a whole different level and just took the whole commitment to this to a whole different level. And it was an amazing experience, and it's been amazing ever since. That is the main story to how Katallasso came together. We spent probably 2 years after that putting it together, making friends, raising money, developing the model for what we were going to do. We knew it had to be focused on relationship and not so much on shoving somebody in a corner, sharing the gospel, and telling them they needed to make a decision. This was all about breaking down barriers. People come to this center now, and sure, most of our providers will ask if they can pray with them at the end, and sometimes our nursing staff or admin staff will pray with people, but we're not beating them with the Bible. We're not stuffing gospel tracts in their hands. Hey, if they want to talk about it, we even provide biblical counseling. If they want to talk about it, we want to talk about it. But if they say no, when we ask them if they want us to pray with them, if they say no, I'm really not into that, we back off, and that's the end of that. But I'll tell you right now, 99.99% of the time, 3-4 visits later, they want to ask questions. They want to talk about, talk about Christ and why we're showing them this love. Because from the moment they walk in, they see a beautiful center that most of our providers say is nicer than their office. They're greeted with friendliness. We care about them. We follow up. We call, each one of our patients is called back about 2 weeks after they get services. We just want to know how they're doing. And we call them for various reasons. Lab results. We call them 2 days prior to their visit to make sure they didn't forget about their visit. These are all relationship things, and that is what we're all about. Because eventually, we know we might be a link in a chain. We don't know where they are going spiritually, but we're not going to pressure them. We just want to be one of those links. Sometimes we're the beginning link, sometimes we're the ending link. But we want to develop a relationship with them that will allow us to reach into their lives with the love of Christ that will impact them possibly for the rest of their life. So that's pretty much the story of how Katallasso came together and what some of our philosophies are here at the center. And we're really unwavering. Sure, we want to have people come here from all different church backgrounds. It's really cool. But we do draw some lines. But we want to develop the Big C church, pull the church together to impact lives right here in the York community. And by the way, we don't just serve people that are here in York City, all throughout York County. People are coming here from Hanover, from Wrightsville, Pelham, Windsor, Redline, all over the place. So here at Katallasso, we just want to impact people's lives in an eternal way by developing solid relationships with them so that they can feel the hope, so that they can feel the love that we ourselves experience.